right, good evening, sports fans. Thank you for joining us for episode 6, I believe, of the Self-Made Sports Network podcast. We are now being brought to you by Hybrid Promotions as of this week. So thanks to everyone at Hybrid, kind of helping us out, giving us a little extra push. Um, as always, I am Slim, joined by my longtime friend JT. How you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm just sitting back, watching our Jayhawks against Dallas Center Grimes. Kind of a chill evening because we not necessarily got to get up early tomorrow, but got to be up and at it a little earlier than usual on a Saturday to head up to Jack Trice tomorrow morning. So just
What you got for a
cooling
score
out,
on
watching the
the game right
Jayhawks.
now?
We're sitting at 14-7. Dallas Center Grimes is winning. I didn't realize back when we were in school, Urbandale didn't play Dallas Center Grimes a whole lot. I guess that Dallas Center Grimes made the jump up to 5A, and they're certainly showing that they can hang with a 5A school. Granted, these days Urbandale is probably more of a fringe 5A school. They might even need to drop down one of these days, but yeah, right now it is 14-7 DCG with about 4 minutes left in third quarter. I'll keep
All
everybody
right, well,
posted.
hopefully Urbandale can pick it up here and get this win. So we're just gonna go ahead and jump straight into it. You see in the hat, you're repping tonight.
Yes, sir.
If you don't know, you're about to know. Why don't you go ahead and let everyone know what's happened in the last couple of days for your boys up there?
Yeah, so I got my green and yellow on. It's a really exciting time to be a Packer fan. Obviously, a few days ago, there started to be some pretty fringe rumors that the Packers might be going after Micah Parsons. I would say those rumors had kind of been on the periphery ever since that Parsons started to kind of voice his displeasure in Dallas, probably like a month or two ago. And Brian Gutekunst got it done. Sending Micah Parsons to the Packers, and just about 15 minutes ago, he officially signed his extension. I believe for $45 million a year. So I'm really excited as a Packer fan.
Yeah, it was like 188 million. I want to say like 130 million that was guaranteed.
Yeah, it's a good deal. I mean, obviously it's a big hit. Salary wise, I was listening to Brian Gutekunst, who's the Packers general manager. If you don't know, I was listening to his press conference this afternoon, and he was kind of talking about how they it is a large amount of money per year, but they did stretch the money out. They did structure the money out so that it's not too bad of a cap hit for the first 3 years. I don't think it gets over $30 million a year as a cap hit. That fourth and potentially the fifth year, you're looking at a $60 million cap hit. So obviously it gets a little nasty there, but it seems like that Brian Gutekunst and Russ Ball structured things pretty well, so that the Packers still have a little bit of wiggle room to get some more things done, or at least just to kind of stay above water, keep the guys you have.
Now, Jordan Love, he's still on is he on his rookie deal or is he on a second deal? No.
No, I think he's technically on his second deal now. I think he's probably in a similar situation as Parsons, where and here in a couple of years he's probably gonna get a decent cap hit. But I believe last year he kind of signed that big extension that all the quarterbacks, $50 something million a year. So yes, he is on his second deal. That's kind of the one downside to the way that the Packers have developed their quarterbacks. And I guess you can't fault them. You can certainly say that it's worked out for them, but the way that they develop their quarterbacks and sitting those quarterbacks for a couple of years is that you don't quite get the value that some of these other teams do when you play your quarterbacks early. That's something that me and your dad were talking about last week of how more teams need to sit their quarterbacks. But one
Absolutely.
pro to playing your quarterbacks early is that if your young quarterback hits, you get a lot of value there because you're not paying him a lot of money. So one downside on how the Packers have done things, but I think it's working out for them.
Yeah, well, one of the upsides of that is, you could potentially get some of those guys or, a quarterback that sits for a couple of years. You might be able to get some sort of a discount or, you get a chance to develop them rather than throwing them into the fire. And, how many quarterbacks over the years have have gone out right away and then they're out of the league in 3 or 4 years, or they get relegated to a lifetime backup spot.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times it's probably a situation where the numbers that Jordan Love had been putting up probably didn't really dictate the money that he received, but all of the leverage is in Jordan Love's corner, where the Packers pretty much had to pay that man his money because there really isn't any other option. So that's just kind of the life of having a quarterback these days in the NFL.
Right, absolutely. And like you said, it's kind of worked out for him over the last, what is it,
Yeah,
30, 35 years now. I mean, you went from Favre to
something
Rodgers,
like that.
and Love's potentially in that grouping to make another big leap this year. I know he made a big leap last year, and he was kind of doing a lot of work with, I don't want to say subpar receivers, but guys that couldn't stay healthy and never really had a clear number one. They might have found the number one in Golden. I guess we'll see how he kind of turns out. I think I asked you a couple weeks ago how you feel about him, but where do you kind of see him fitting into that offense?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I think kind of I don't even remember if this was an on-air or off-air conversation we had where basically the Packers have a lot of quality across the board depth at wide receiver. I think we use the phrase they've just got a bunch of like number two wide receivers.
Yep.
They don't really have that number one guy. Obviously, the plan was always for Christian Watson to be that number one guy, and he's certainly shown flashes, but he's been the receiver that's most injury prone. I see he's hurt again. I see he's got a knee injury and he's out, and he's going to start on the pup lister injury reserve, designated to return or whatever they call it these days. So yeah, there's certainly going to be an opportunity for Golden to see what he can do. I still think technically right now the Packers number one wide receiver is Jaden Reed, until somebody
I'd
else shows
agree.
us otherwise. But then, of course, the news came out, I think it was probably earlier this week, that Jaden Reed is playing with, it's something that I'd never heard before. It's called a Jones fracture in his fifth metatarsal, which is your smallest pinky bone, your pinky toe. Typically an injury that sidelines people for quite some time, but it sounds like he's going to try to play through that. So kind of odd contradictory reporting there where anyway, I don't want to get too caught up in the minutia of the injury, but at the end of the day, it sounds like the Jaden Reed is hurt as well. So I think Golden might be one of the only ones that's not dealing with anything, as far as I know. But yeah, it certainly seems like the Golden's going to have an opportunity to show what he's got with just a lot of injuries going on in that Packers wide receiver room.
I kind of want to pivot to the defense a little bit with the addition of Parsons.
Yeah.
How do you kind of see that defense? What do you think the scheme is going to be this year? I know they got superstars at pretty much almost every level of the field now on defense. Do you kind of see them playing into that, or do you see them kind of using that to shut down a side of the field? Or
yeah, so I guess the thing about the Packers defense is certainly the strength is going to come up front. That defensive line and your linebackers are by far the most talented level of your defense. So I guess just kind of taking a step back, I think talking about Parsons specifically and just looking at the trade, one thing that I was concerned about when the Parsons trade started to when those rumors started to get out is that I was concerned that they would have to give up Rashawn Gary in order to get Micah Parsons, but it turns out that they only had to give up Kenny Clark in 2 first. Obviously, Kenny
really
Clark
not shit in the
was
grand scheme of things.
yeah. I mean, Kenny Clark was a solid Packer, a solid big guy, kind of he's the Dominique Orange of the Green Bay Packers, and but been a really loyal Packer, really good guy. The Packers drafted that kid when he was 20 years old. He's pushing 30 now, so he's certainly built a lot of roots in Green Bay. So it's kind of DCG just brought a punt back. That's great. Anyway, it's rough to lose Kenny Clark up. You do kind of worry about some of your depth there. at the defensive tackle. There's a couple of guys there. It also might mean that some of those defensive ends might play inside. You see the former Hawkeye Luca Van Ness. Maybe he gets some shots inside. But I guess kind of getting back to your original question, it seemed like that they're obviously their bread and butter is going to be that pass rush and hopefully the run defense as well. Because as I've talked about before, I do have some concerns about the Packers cornerback room. It's really not a whole lot of well-known guys. Obviously, they lost Jair Alexander, which is a bummer. I wish they could have figured things out with him. Granted, if they had kept Jair Alexander, I don't know if they would have been able to get Micah Parsons. So it's kind of a
Right.
trade-off there. And certainly, you still got Xavier McKinney back there at safety. So their safeties are pretty good. It's just specifically those cornerbacks. I guess it would be naive of me to say that they're not they're just more anonymous. Obviously, I'm not smart enough to know what's going on there. You're kind of looking at the point where Keyshawn Nixon's your best cornerback, and he certainly had his highs and lows. So I guess the way that I see it is that you kind of go the philosophy that if you have a really freaking good pass rush with Micah Parsons coming off one edge and Rashawn Gary coming off the other edge, doesn't really matter how good your cornerbacks are because the quarterback's not going to be able to get a good throw off. So it seems like that's where they're going to go with things, is that they're going to lean on their front seven to get to these quarterbacks, not give them a whole lot of time, and give this unproven secondary a chance to survive.
Do you like? Do you feel better about their odds to maybe make a deep run this year? Clearly, they've improved a little bit. So the expectations are obviously higher now with making that trade. You don't make that trade to stay in one spot. So, I mean, do you see them?
Yeah.
What do you think the ceiling is?
Yeah, I mean, you have to say that the ceiling is a Super Bowl. I mean, they've gotten so close these past couple of years. It seems like that they're pushing their chips in. Obviously, the Packers front office is not looking at it that way. At least publicly, they're not going to look at it that way. I think Brian Gutekunst said something to the effect of he doesn't really believe in the philosophy that you just need one extra player to kind of finish the piece and kind of bring you over the edge of being a Super Bowl contender. That's just more kind of GM speak, but certainly
he is right. He is right to a certain extent because I mean, there's
especially in
22
football,
guys. Yeah, there's 22 guys that make up offense and defense, and then that's not even including special teams. So, I mean, essentially,
especially
it is
when the guy you bring in isn't a playmaker position, I should say.
Yeah, but obviously, we've seen Parsons what he's done in Dallas. He clearly is one of those guys that can kind of shift the playing field a little bit.
Yeah, so that'll be kind of interesting. There's a lot of questions in the NFC North that it's going to be really interesting to see get answered. Kind of looking at the Bears. What is Caleb Williams going to look like with Ben Johnson? What's Detroit going to look like without the coordinators? And then what's JJ McCarthy going to look like in Minnesota? And then obviously can the Packers kind of take that next gradual step? They don't need to take a huge step. I think they were kind of already there, but certainly they weren't doing good enough to win it all. So there are lots of interesting storylines in the NFC North where I think truly I think all four of those teams in the NFC North are really boomer bust potential teams. You could see any of those four teams being really good, maybe with the exception of the Vikings. I guess it'd be hard to picture the Vikings being really good. But
they went
with all
14-3 last year.
Bust.
I think the Vikings
but that was
sure,
but they don't have the quarterback anymore, so it just kind of depends on what JJ McCarthy can give you.
Yeah, I don't know how much I really believe in him. I guess we got to wait to see him. We just talked about Arch Manning last week, and you and I both said we don't really believe in him right now, but it's a small sample size that you've seen from him. And McCarthy came from an offense in college that he didn't really pass the ball very much. He had a good running back, and it was a lot of short game and a stout defense that kind of he was more of a game manager for him. So it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do with with him in a obviously you got one of the best receivers in the league in Jefferson.
Yeah, that's a good point. You still got Jefferson there, so I guess that I think that just goes back to all four teams have boomer bust potential, where you could see all four teams. Any of those four teams, I should say. Obviously, it's almost impossible for all four of them to be that good, just mathematically. But you could see any of those four teams being really good. But I could also see any of those four teams really shit in the bed, and that includes the Packers, just because there's still a lot of questions there. Yeah, you don't know.
One last thing I got on this before we move on. Do you see him winning the division this year? If you had to guess right now.
If I had to guess right now, I would say yes. I think of the questions that each of the four teams have, I think the Packers are more likely to answer those questions. So yeah, I would say, just to keep it short and sweet, I do think the Packers will win that division, and certainly right now they're the odds-on favorite.
All right, that's all I got for you on that. I just kind of wanted to grill you real quick and get your true, honest, raw reaction to it. I know we haven't talked about it much outside of this, so I was really excited to
certainly
kind of see what you had to say.
Certainly really excited. Yeah, certainly really excited. I guess kind of curious to see how quickly they can kind of spin him up to see when he'll be effective, because he hasn't really been practicing it. He literally has not been practicing at all. So that was something that Matt LaFleur, I also listened to Matt LaFleur's press conference this afternoon, and that was kind of something that they talked about, is that that coaching staff is going to need to put in a lot of effort to bring Micah Parsons up to speed. So it'll be interesting to see how often and when they're able to deploy their new weapon.
Well said. Before we move on here, I'm glad you brought up press conferences. I kind of want to get into that next with you, but before we get there, shout out to my boy Young Bakes. I see him in the comment section here. Haven't really learned how to get comments on screen yet, but trust and assured, I'm working on trying to figure that out day by day. So eventually, if you comment on this live anywhere, we'll try and get you on the screen at some point. So I said I wanted to talk about press conferences. I don't know if you've seen it this week, but Matt Campbell had a press conference once he got back from Ireland. I believe it was Tuesday. A couple things I have of note here. He said that not a single one of their players missed a class on Monday after making that trip home Sunday, late Saturday, early Sunday morning. Which, if you've been on a plane ride that crosses that many time zones, I don't think a lot of people understand how crazy that is, that not a single guy missed class. Granted, we don't know what time those classes were. They could have been 12 o'clock classes or 2 o'clock classes, but I think just that commitment to making sure that they're still student athletes and not athlete students at this point, I think it's something you really love to see.
Yeah, I'd kind of forgotten about that they had their first day of classes there that Monday after. That's a tough turnaround, but certainly credit to them for handling that.
Well, and they're also still pretty young, so I mean, there's been many nights where I've stayed up pretty late playing video games with the boys, and we still seem to make it to school the next day. Another thing that he kind of talked about was plays in the moment. It's at this point, it's kind of old news to hear him talk about the process or talk about winning in the margins. For the first 6 or 7 years, you didn't really see that. It always seemed like they lost games in the margins. They just couldn't really get over that hump. And here, since the Kansas State snow game in 23, they are 7-1 in one-score games. And before that,
wow.
I think they had lost 10 out of 11 going before that game, leading up to it. So I think you're kind of really seeing kind of a culture shift that he's been talking about for years, that a lot of people on the outside haven't bought into. But I mean, you see all the players they have in the NFL now. I know you want to get to Cyclones in the NFL here in a little bit, and we will swing back around to that. But just being able to watch on Sundays and seeing a lot of guys that you watch for 2 or 3 years, kind of make a name for themselves, at a school that, has let's be honest, a horrible history as far as success, kind of it these last couple years feels like they're really kind of turning the corner.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that as far as, kind of what you've seen? I know you've been up there for a number of years now with season tickets. Do you feel a shift in like the energy and, kind of what the perception of the team overall? And do you feel differently yourself about, late in the game, for years it was, oh, fuck, what are they going to do to blow this? And, curious if you still feel that way or if you kind of feel yourself more at peace later in games.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because when it comes to the shift in energy, I would say I haven't really seen a shift in energy, but I mean that in kind of a good way, and more that the Iowa State fans have always been diehards. That they've always been filling that stadium even when they've been really bad. So I haven't felt a shift in energy that much, but I kind of more mean that in a good way. Now, when it comes to the perception of the team, now certainly that's where you've seen a lot of shifts there. I was listening to Murph and Andy earlier in the weekend. I think Andy Fales made the good point of it's finally time to turn the page on the
Yep.
Cyclones history and just focusing on the last 10 years of Matt Campbell, accepting that as the history, and don't let all the bullshit before that kind of invade your memory. And that was really nice to hear from kind of a high level member of the Des Moines media. So if you see someone like that saying that, so it certainly seems like the perception has changed. And I kind of had a surreal moment before the Dublin Ireland game where the college game day, the kind of truncated college game day show they had, they were all talking about Iowa State, and they were kind of the center of attention. Granted, just because it was the main game, but it certainly seems like at a national level, the perspective of the program has changed. Now, like if the cardiac clones feeling has gone away, I would say no, and I don't know if that'll ever go away.
I would say
That's
it's
a
almost been
permanent.
amplified. I
Yeah,
say it's even
probably
worse now than
just
it
because the
was,
stakes are.
5 years ago.
Yeah, just because the stakes are higher. So, and that's no shade on the team. It's just kind of how that fan base is. I don't really think that's unique to the Cyclone fan base either. It's just kind of how it is. So, fans get nervous.
I don't know, like I said on Saturday after the win, I think I lost 2 years off my life. So if they keep getting in games like that, I could be in trouble here by the end of the season. But I mean, they're pulling them out right now, so I mean that it's just something good to see that usually it's you're at tomb and doom late in games, just hoping something doesn't go wrong, and seeing them drive down the field and need to score situations and coming through, especially with Beck, the way he's played late in games. It's just kind of crazy to, see everything he's talked about for the last 6 or 7 years in Campbell, like finally coming through on the field.
Mm. Amen to that. So
one more thing I got on here is I want to talk about Dom Citrus. I got elite in all letters after his name here on my notes. I think he has the potential to be an ultimate game changer this year for him up front.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's kind of those defensive tackles we were just talking about. The defensive tackles with Kenny Clark. Dom Orange plays a very similar role for the Cyclones, and really kind of something of an unsung position where those nose tackles and defensive tackles don't always rack up the stats. But if you just watch the tape, you can see that what Dom Orange does for the Cyclones line. I always go back to that play last year against Iowa where Iowa was like on like the 3-yard line or something like that. It was 4th down. They decided to go for it. And pretty much considering the history of the Iowa Hawkeyes, if they're on the 2 or 3-yard line, 4th down, they need to run the ball to punch it in.
Right.
It's almost kind of guaranteed, but it's very kind of turned into infamous footage of Dom Orange just blowing by that line and just blowing up the running back. So he certainly does a lot for the Cyclones in the run game. So, yeah, I think I saw one of the NFL draft prognosticators say that I think that Don Morge could be looking at a day 2 draft pick. So he's starting to get some national professional attention as well. So he certainly deserves it.
Well, I mean, we've kind of watched him grow up here over the years. I remember when he signed, he came in at plus 400 pounds out of high school, wasn't really fit. He was just a big dude, kind of like reminded you almost of like a Vita Vea. Or who was that nose tackle for the Patriots for all those years? Vincent Wilfork.
Vince Wilfork, yeah.
And Florida just had that dude that's like 446 pounds. He just got released. Desmond Watson, I think was his name. He just got released by whoever took a chance on him. And, there was a certain point in Big Citrus's career here at Iowa State that, he looked like he might have been going down that path of, just a guy with a lot of raw talent, but, just couldn't get in shape. And that was kind of the first thing I noticed about him last week is he looks, he looks really lean now. And, he was taking on 3 guys at a time on the line and, at certain points. And, if they can get a linebacker to get in there and, add some extra pressure, if he's taking up 3 guys, now you got 2 on 3 if there's no running back to chip or anything like that. So, that could be huge down the stretch in some crucial moments.
Yeah, definitely. That's about all I have on that. He's a brick wall there, and he's kind of the stalwart of that defensive line without question.
Yeah, I think that's about all I got on Campbell's press conference. I was going to watch a couple others, but I just didn't quite get around to it this weekend. Obviously, we got plenty of weeks to go, so it's obviously a small sample size right now. But let's go ahead and get into the South Dakota game coming off of that, since we were going from press conference to basically we can go straight to the game here.
Yeah, so certainly I guess you could call it an interesting matchup. I mean, Matt Campbell's doing all he can to hype up South Dakota just kind of as a mental thing for his team. But I do think that, it's no secret that those Dakota teams are powerhouse football programs when it comes to the FCS level. So kind of an interesting storyline that some people don't know about is that South Dakota's quarterback, Aiden Bowman, played for the Cyclones. I don't think he actually saw a whole lot of field time. I think he was on the roster for 2 years. We were talking about this. I didn't actually fact check this, but I believe I'm correct. He was the same year as Hunter Deckers. It was the rare time where usually programs just take one quarterback on scholarship each year. They actually decided to take a second one. I don't remember the order that it went in, but they took 2 guys, Bowman and Deckers. And like I said, I don't remember the details, but I can only assume it was obviously a good terms transfer where obviously at some point Hunter Deckers kind of leapfrogged or moved ahead of Bowman in the depth chart. And I'm sure that Bowman kind of saw the writing on the wall. I'm sure that when you have quarterbacks in the same class, you kind of know that at some point one of them is going to shake loose and head elsewhere. But anyway, Bowman's put up a really, really good career at South Dakota. So it'd be kind of interesting to get a chance to see him play. I'm sure he'll have some extra motivation, not necessarily like any bad blood or anything like that, but even when you transfer from a team on good terms, I'm sure he wants to stick it to the Clones. And
absolutely. Sure kind of prove him wrong that they didn't believe in him or anything like that. But I'm sure if you ask him, he's got nothing but good things to say about Campbell as well.
Yeah, and I know that Campbell had nothing but good things to say about Bowman. So yeah, just kind of interesting storyline there. Probably a tangent for another day is Aiden Bowman is just another guy in the list of what ifs of if one little thing went differently in the Cyclones quarterback room. You kind of wonder if the Cyclones would be where they're at today, because I think even at this point, if that gambling investigation never takes place, I think Hunter Deckers is probably still our quarterback, and Lord knows where Rocco Becht is, but
Yep,
that's
you
a
probably
tangent.
don't see him on the
Probably a
field at Iowa
conversation.
State.
That's probably a conversation for a slower week, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see Bowman out there. As far as the Cyclones are concerned, I've been listening to Cyclone Fanatic a lot this week, and I happen to agree with them. It's probably you're probably looking at a game where uh, the Clones are going to keep it kind of at arm's length. They're going to keep it comfortable, but I don't know if they'll get to the point where they'll really blow out South Dakota. They'll kind of keep it within 10, 17, 20 points at most. So it kind of similar to the North Dakota game last year where um, the Cyclones certainly had a chokehold on the game the entire time, but the score didn't end up being that sexy. And certainly Vegas is feeling the same way. I think the Cyclones have been hovering around a 2-touchdown favorite, 2 touchdowns and a hook. I don't know exactly where it's at now.
I've seen anywhere
I,
between 13 and a half and 16 and a half. So right around two
yeah, so like
touchdowns.
it kind of Vegas is kind of feeling the same thing that the Cyclone Fanatic crew is feeling, and I happen to agree with them. So I guess what do you think we're going to see out of this game?
I kind of think you're almost totally hit the nail right on the head there. What's weird about these first couple games for Iowa State every year is you play your arguably one of your biggest games of the year, usually your second or third game. The last couple years it's been their second game, and that's of course against Iowa. So you don't really want to put too much on film. I've kind of heard that phrase a million times this week. You don't want to give them too much to be able to study or show too many wrinkles of what the offense is capable of. But at the same time, you still got to go out and win the game you're playing. So I think they
And
probably
Matt Cat's
try
kind
and
of out of the bag.
well, yeah. But I mean, like I said, you gotta play the game that you're playing now to win. You can't really be conservative against Kansas State, to try and beat Iowa, because then you do kind of fall into they're the Super Bowl narratives that Iowa fans are still trying to push, even though it's definitely buried about 6 feet in the dirt right now. So I think they'll try and get out to a fast start, maybe, get 3 touchdowns early, and then I wouldn't say take the foot off the gas, but, just keep them at arm's length. And, I'd probably expect like a 31-17 or maybe like a 31-10 final score. I don't think it's ever really in question. And, that also depends on whether or not you can hang on to the ball. You obviously can't have turnovers early in the game, because then you're kind of getting into dangerous territory. So I think as long as you hold on to the ball, I think this is pretty much in the bag at halftime.
Yeah, hopefully. Obviously, I think the turnover issue that we saw last week, and it's not that groundbreaking of an opinion, that it really had more to do with the elements there in Ireland. So
Absolutely.
I think someone showed a graphic during that game that Iowa State lost 2 fumbles all of last year, and
Yep.
they lost 2 fumbles in the first half of last game. But yeah, I think that was just more due to the elements. So yeah, I mean, I guess when it comes to the defense we have here, I kind of hope that they don't score more than 10. I think if South Dakota puts up more than 10 against that defense, I'm a little mildly concerned. I suppose it depends on when the scores come. So yeah, I think they'll kind of keep it at arm's length. It'll be kind of interesting to see again if any of those new receivers get any more face time. I thought that I was listening to Williams and Jake Bren's pregame, kind of their official pregame show, Cyclone Fanatic, and Jake brought up a really good point where he thinks that Xavier Townsend is probably more dinged up than Matt Campbell is leading along, and the proof that he brought to the table for that
I know
is
where you're
that
going with this.
Townsend was supposed to be the kick returner.
Yep. Yep. I knew
He was
that's
listed
exactly
as
where you
number
were
one
going.
as a kick returner, and you kind of think that when it comes to being a kick returner, there's nothing, you don't really need to gel with your new team like it is when it comes to being a receiver. So if you feel like if he was 100%, but maybe just not quite gelling in the offense, he'd still be returning kicks. Obviously, we've seen Aiden Flora returning kicks for Iowa State. So that's kind of something to keep in mind, is that maybe Townsend's a little banged up. because you did see that Sowell did get a couple of targets. He just didn't convert. So that'd be kind of interesting to see if Townsend plays a whole lot, or that's kind of the one nice thing about being in the stadium, is that you kind of have more time during the downtime to kind of browse the sideline and kind of check body language, see if a guy looks like he's going to be in the game, and that's something I'll keep an eye out and potentially report back on next week.
Yeah, and you got a really good advantage of the Iowa State sideline.
Yep, we're just right under the press box, dead center, 50-yard line, or about the 45-yard line. But yeah, it's a good bird's eye view of the sideline.
You have anything else you want to touch on that game? I think it's going to be a rather pedestrian week, or at least I hope.
Yeah,
so.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot of juices flowing just because the home opener. I see that Cyclones just announced they did finally hit that sellout point. So there's going to be a lot of juices flowing when the game starts. But kind of like you said, I think that'll hopefully, in a good way, it'll kind of die off pretty quickly, and it'll turn into a bit of a barn burner. So I guess we'll see. I think that's what we hope for. I don't think we want any excitement. So
yeah, no, I'd rather keep it a little mundane. I do have some plans for the game, but we'll get into that here in a little bit later. You have anything else you want to add to the preview for tomorrow's home opener?
Nope. I got nothing. Just excited to get up there. Excited to get back at it. Should be a great day for football.
Yeah, the weather looks like it's going to be perfect.
Yeah. For an August football game, it's going to be about the best you could ask for. Not too hot, maybe some clouds to make sure you're not roasting too much. So yeah, it'll be good.
All right. Well, I'm gonna hit a couple topics that I know you're not too fond of, but as I've stated before, I do live in Omaha, Nebraska. The Huskers did play a football game last night against a Big 12 opponent in Cincinnati, and the Huskers are starting out their season 1-0. They didn't look the greatest at times, but there were also times where they did look fairly crisp. Couple things that I kind of took away from it. I think it's Holgerson's their new OC. There were times in that game last night where I think there's a couple different people calling plays for that offense. There are times where they looked really good on some plays, and then there was, obviously some tough spots where they needed something, and they just looked like they didn't really know what the hell they were doing, or the play that they called was not, a play that, should be called on that spot. Raiola, their number one overall, or the nation's number one overall recruit from a couple years ago. I think he still looks a little timid. Granted, he's only a sophomore, and it's the first game of the year, and everyone's got a little bit of rust. But I think if they're gonna take that next step to officially be back like they supposedly have been for the last 10 years, I think you kind of need him to make some throws, and he definitely made some throws last night that were kind of otherworldly, but at the same time you got the opposite end of the spectrum where he's making not hitting open targets or overthrowing people or taking bad sacks. And I really think if the offense is going to go, they gotta get the guys that are playmakers involved. I got a message from Vic here. We were talking about it last night. He gave some really good insight on it. They got a guy named Jacoby Barney Jr. He had a couple really good catches for him, but he just wasn't involved in the offense like he should. It'd be like having like a Jalen Noel and only throwing the ball to him like 3 times. That's a guy you got to get the ball to, because he can really stretch the field and open up other things for you. I think their run game looks good when the blocks are made. I mean, that's usually how the run game works. It looks good when you make blocks, but they also had a lot of plays where they seemed to really get pushed off the line. So I don't really know how experienced that offensive line is. But I think, if you're going to continue to play the way they play. They don't seem like a team that's really going to stretch the field and, kind of air it out. They seem like they're going to play, more of a mid-range game. And, if you're going to do something like that, you got to be able to run the ball. They did have a point in the first half where they had a 1st and goal, a good conversion to get that 1st and goal. And, they had the famous false start on that 1st and goal, pushed them back 5 yards. Can't remember what the result of that drive was. I can't remember if they went for it on 4th and didn't get it or kicked a field goal, but they did not score a touchdown on that drive, and that kind of put them in a tough spot late in the game. Another thing that I got here for this is I did not like how unaggressive they were on like 3rd and shorts. You saw a lot of shotgun snaps on like 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 3s. I know Iowa State did that last week a couple times, but they seem to have like a better scheme, because they'll come out under center and then they'll, they had that play where they came out under center, they spread everybody wide, and then they ran that sweep coming back with the keeper for Rocco. I still don't understand why teams hand the ball off on 3rd and short to the running back from the shotgun position. I mean, I'll keep referencing it. You and I have played.
It does allow you to get a little momentum. So,
yeah, but you and I have played numerous football games for numerous hours for many years. And how often does that play on a 3rd and short? How often does that play come through and get you a 1st down out of that shotgun? It's a play call I wish that at least my teams would get away from. I think it's a horrible play call, and I just don't agree with it at all. The last thing I got on this Friday, I don't know if you watched the game last night.
I watched the first half.
It was a late game. It was definitely a late game. That was a little different.
It certainly is. It was kind of a sleepy first half. So I don't have a whole lot of thoughts other than just some of the sideshow stuff with Dylan Raiola. I don't know if you want to get into that or not, so I'll kind of let you finish your thought.
Yeah, I just got one more thing here that we can kind of get into that. Hartzog Jr., one of their cornerbacks, or he might be a safety. Late in the game, Cincinnati's driving down the field. He gets a holding penalty on a 3rd down that gives Cincinnati a 1st down and a fresh chance to go towards the end zone. And the very next play after that, he sealed it up with an interception at the goal line. That was a jump ball that, if he doesn't get his hands on it, there's a good chance that that receiver who's, sitting right behind him, it kind of drops into the bucket. So he had a couple other plays that were questionable in the first half, but it was nice to see someone like him who's kind of expected to be a leader, kind of make up for his mistakes in real time and ultimately sealed the game for him. I hate to say it and admit it on tape, but I definitely did raise the decibel level in the complex last night when that interception was secured. Just from trying to root for a lot of the people I know out here, that's their favorite team. So it's, like I said, it's almost kind of like an adopted brother at this point. It was nice to see him get a win. So you wanted to talk about this Raiola stuff. I haven't paid a lot of attention to it, but I will admit that it's getting a little weird.
Yeah, see, that's I've been excited to tune into Nebraska games because I kind of want to see what Raiola's made of. He's certainly bringing a lot of attention to himself. He has the potential to be an interesting storyline, to kind of be a flashy storyline. Obviously, for those that don't know, kind of the shtick that he has developed is that he basically dresses and acts and equips himself and manicures himself like Patrick Mahomes. But the weird part is that the weird part is that he pretends that he's not. He has a quote about it. It's not. I don't blame God for not for making me like Patrick Mahomes or something like that, making me similar to Patrick. I'm paraphrasing. Well, when in reality, they really don't. If you kind of strip down all of the kind of gear and facial hair and grooming that he doesn't really look that similar to Patrick Mahomes. Any similarities that he's drawing to Patrick Mahomes, is something that he has to do, whether it's wearing the same equipment, wearing the same number, having the same
Through
haircut, having the
accessories.
same beard style. Well, yeah, wearing the same accessories, having those same sunglasses, and or doing the same celebrations. So it's just kind of weird that he kind of he seems to kind of refuse to admit what's going on. It's kind of strange. So, um, yeah, I think if he's gonna be like that, he needs to start slinging around a little bit better. I wasn't that impressed with what I saw in the first half. I did kind of I watched the first half of the game, and then I ended up catching that very last Cincinnati drive that where Nebraska picked the ball off. And at the time, I did check the stat line. It looks like that Rayola must have ended up salvaging the game pretty decently. So that's kind of my thoughts on it, is that he certainly has the potential to be a storyline, and it does cause me to pay a little closer to attention to Nebraska games. I'm not really a fan of Nebraska, but I'm kind of the opinion that it would be good for college football if Nebraska could salvage some semblance of relevance. So I think it'd be kind of fun to see them be good again, and they just haven't quite been there yet. So we'll just kind of have to see what happens.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think it's good for college sports. It's good for the health of a lot of people that live here in Omaha. So
And it makes Iowa
um,
fans mad.
yeah, so that's the one thing that we do have in common with each other, is that we we both have a very disdain taste for the team in Iowa City. Um, I guess we won't spend too much time on it, but we'll go ahead and talk about them just to cover all our bases here. The Hawks play.
There's some big news there. I don't know if you saw. Um, the Iowa announced that I believe he's their best receiver. That Reese Vanderzee, I believe he's one of, if not their best receiver. He sustained a foot injury, and he's going to be out for a week. So,
Oh, really? I should have pulled up the breaking
whatever
news
that.
banner for that.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's their best receiver. Um, but yeah, that was kind of some breaking news here this week, is that Reese, I believe his name is Reese Vanderzee. Um, let's see if we can get
He's
it
a
pulled up
junior, isn't
here.
he?
Yeah, just looking at yeah, he's sustained what they call a freak foot injury, and is expected to miss about a month. So I don't know. Whenever you hear freak foot injury, that means he, I don't know, probably like slipped in the shower or some shit like that. Or
That's the second time we brought
um,
up weird foot injuries tonight.
so um, I think Vanderzee might just be a sophomore. But
He
anyway,
is. He is a
um,
sophomore. What do
yeah,
you kind
so
of
I
expect
guess
from
that'll be
this
kind of.
game?
I guess it'll be kind of. It'll just be interesting to see what the quarterback's able to do. Like there always is. There's lots of hype around this quarterback, and unfortunately, Urbandale's not playing well. And unfortunately, Vanderzee being out kind of gives it gives the Hawkeyes a built-in excuse, as they like to do if Gronowski or whatever his name is plays poorly. But yeah, it'd be kind of interesting to see what that offense looks like, to see if they have any semblance of a real offense. And obviously, they're going to win the game. I would highly suggest everyone to bet the under. I don't even know what the number is, but bet the under. But yeah, I'm just. I guess I've said it already. It'd be just interesting to see what the quarterback looks like. That's about all I care about. What about you?
Um, yeah, I think the most important thing if you're an Iowa fan is you just want to see that offense, at least show the ability to move the ball. Albany's got a interim head coach. They almost got a completely flipped roster from last year. They are Williams and Hassel were talking this morning. This might be the worst team Iowa has faced in the modern football era ever. I believe they're 38.5-point favorites right now. I'm trying to find the over under for points. But yeah, I think I don't think there's any question that they're going to win. I think the real question is how big is the margin going to be, and are you going to look good putting up a good margin? What are you going to get from your defense? Is it going to be the same thing it's been year in, year out? It seems like for the last 25 years under Ferentz, or I know there's a little concern that they might take a step back this year. That's got to be something I'm going to have to wait and see to believe it. It just seems like every year they kind of have some dogs come up that no one really has on the radar that kind of make a name for themselves and end up being a key piece of that defense. So I really think the most important thing is just seeing if the offense can show any literacy and how to play football at this point. The famous quote from McNamara last year, just begging for someone to tell them that they were going to be the shittiest offense in football. And he came through on his quote. They were the shittiest offense in football. I think you got to kind of take the quarterback situation with a grain of salt over there. I'd like to see some deep balls from him, maybe. You just got to open it up a little bit. I mean, you're playing a team that's not very good. It's basically like an exhibition. So I think, you want to kind of go out and do some things to make the game more fun for your players and maybe get something going to build a little momentum going into one of their biggest games of the year for sure, in Ames the following week. So
so right now the FanDuel has the over-under is at 50.5, and they have Iowa favored by 38.5 with lots of juice on that 38.5 on the Iowa side. So that's just kind of a crazy looking number that you usually don't see associated with an Iowa Hawkeye football game.
What's the money line number?
Even with that? The money line's off the board.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, money line's off the board. So yeah, it's just kind of it seemed like the easy bet is to take the under 50.5 and for Albany to cover the 38.5. But I don't know. It's just we all know the deal there with Iowa's offense. But like I said, if they show any improvements on that offense, then maybe they do. Or maybe Albany's just bad enough that even a subpar Iowa offense can cover that 38.5.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd necessarily touch anything in that game. I think Iowa maybe puts up 40 points. So at that point, you're hoping that they can keep Albany in the single digits. You get a late garbage touchdown in that game when you got second and third stringers in is definitely a possibility. So I think it's kind of a coin flip at that point on the over under. And then I don't know if I necessarily believe 38.5 either. So I'd advise anyone that's going to take horrible gambling advice, I'd probably stay away from that game. And that's about all I got. Brushing up on Iowa here. I know you wanted to get into Joe Woodley.
Just kind of. I won't go too far in depth because I know that Drake football isn't exactly the hottest topic. It's not even the hottest topic amongst Drake fans. But obviously there was a new era in Drake football with Joe Woodley taking over the helm for the Bulldogs. As some of you may know, Joe Woodley was just kind of this powerhouse head coach at the NAIA level at Grandview. I think he's only lost a total of 5 games in his tenure. Very similar to the basketball hire that they made a year ago with Ben McCollum. Very similar peripherals where you're bringing this guy who was very successful, just elite powerhouse level of success at a lower level, but very renowned and kind of taking a step up. Was very curious to see just how that would look. When it comes to Drake football, they are a Division I team. They are FCS, but you can't always take their opponent level at face value. That they played Division II Upper Iowa. Sometimes it's hard to tell if a Division II scholarship team is supposed to be better than a Division I FCS non-scholarship team. But
That's what I was just about to ask you. They are still non-scholarship.
yes, they are still non-scholarship, which is it kind of makes it a kind of one of the reasons I was a little bit surprised that Woodley took that gig. I guess certainly you could see what kind of a springboard that Drake football job can be as something it hasn't been before. And anyway, just to make it really quick, I mean, Drake took Upper Iowa to the woodshed pretty heavy-handedly. I think a 41-7 victory was the final score. So no issues off the bat. I was pretty impressed with Drake's offense. They seem to have a pretty good quarterback. I believe his name was Chase Spellman, and they have a couple of really good looking wide receivers. One of which was actually Kansas State last year. That was one thing that Todd Stepsis, who was Drake's previous coach, who obviously went off to UNI. That'll be another interesting storyline to see if what Todd Stepsis' debut looks like in Cedar Falls. But anyway, Stepsis didn't really attack the transfer portal a lot, and I'm guessing it's really hard to go after the transfer portal when you don't have scholarships to offer guys. But Woodley was able to get a handful of guys, not necessarily that have D1 playing experience, but were on D1 rosters last year. To take it for what you will. But yeah, one of their wide receivers was a guy that was a freshman at Kansas State last year. But anyway, I'll kind of wrap this up pretty quickly because I know it's not the most interesting topic, but it was nice to see Joe Woodley hit the ground running, and excited to see what the Bulldogs have in store. Certainly they have a lot tougher schedule coming up next. They play South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits, I believe, in 2 weeks. As we've talked about before, those Dakota schools are powerhouses when it comes to those FCS teams. They actually also play. It's a year where Iowa State and Drake share an opponent. Drake also gets a shot at South Dakota 2 weeks after Iowa State gets their shot at them. So that'll be kind of interesting to see. So it's kind of an interesting situation where you never really expect Drake to win those games, even when they're really good. You kind of wonder how Joe Woodley will react to that adversity. You're looking at a guy who's only lost 5 games in his career, basically, at Grandview. And he's looking at a situation where he's probably going to take a few L's. I'd love to be proven wrong, but it's just such a stark difference in talent that it would be quite the feat for Drake to knock off South Dakota State and South Dakota. I forget what other games they have in there as well, but yeah, certainly excited to see what the Bulldogs have in store on the football field, and certainly Joe Woodley seems to be picking up where he left off with the Bulldogs. Yep. So they actually in back-to-back weeks, September 13th, Drake at South Dakota State. September 20th, a week later, Drake at South Dakota. So that's a tough stretch right there before Drake enters the Pioneer Football League schedule. So
yeah, a couple of testers for him.
Yeah.
I know you wanted to kind of talk, a little more college football. I guess we can go over a couple of games. Is there anything other than the big game this weekend that you're kind of looking forward to, other than college football just being back in the full swing? We kind of got the teaser with Iowa State last week, and there's some really big matchups this week. Obviously,
yes.
Number 1 versus number 3, Miami, Notre Dame, and I know there's one more. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Number 1 versus number 3 is Texas, Ohio State.
Yep. I was going to reference them by name. I was going to leave those out.
Oh, I see.
As you know, it's always horns down. Will always be horns down.
That's
so
right.
No doubt we're going Ohio State in that game. Hopefully they stomp them. But I can't remember an opening week, the real opening week that's had matchups this big in recent years. Obviously, Alabama's played some big week 1 or week 2 games, but I can't remember when we were treated with kind of a lineup that we're going to get this weekend with with all the big games and all the potential upsets that could be out there.
Yeah, so a really exciting slate. Obviously, when it comes to me, I don't get too involved with the other games around the schedule when Iowa State has a home game, just because, as anybody knows, that trip up
You
to
can't.
Jack Trice for a home game is kind of a days long event, so you don't get a whole lot of time to watch the other games. I'm sure I'll probably get a chance to check out some of those 6, 7, 8 o'clock games. So hopefully, I am excited. I kind of a quick side tangent here. Excited to watch Iowa State legend Jeff Woody make his national broadcasting debut.
Yes, that's right.
With the Texas Tech Arkansas Pine Bluff game. That's at 6:30 on ESPN Plus. So maybe catch something like that. But yeah, kind of the downside of being up in Ames is missing some of those games. Obviously that number 1 versus number 3, that's an 11 a.m. game. So I won't get a chance to see some of that. So actually they might have that game on in the stadium pregame. So, but yeah, hopefully I'll have some more in-depth advice on that on days that Iowa State has an away game where I have a little more time to pay attention to the road games.
Yeah, like you said, any day you go up to Ames, it's not only a 1-day commitment, it's almost like a day and a half commitment because it takes about half a day to just even prepare, especially if you're going to go up and tailgate for, a decent amount of time before you get into the stadium, with getting all your stuff together, making sure you got, all your alcohol, your grill, your food, just kind of coordinating, what time you're going to leave, all that. It really kind of sucks the time out of the day. Like I said, not that it's a bad thing, it's kind of more of a hype train to it. I'll be interested to see what your review is on the new 5G in the stadium this year. Because if you haven't been to Jack Trice,
I actually hadn't heard that. Is that supposed to be happening?
I'm pretty sure it's this year that they updated the cell towers. If you've never been to Jack Trice, you wouldn't be able to tell anybody you're in Jack Trice. It's a horrible dead zone for almost any cell service. It's literally a black hole.
Yeah,
it's pretty spotty at times, but then there are times where you're not taking any pictures or posting anything live from the game unless you're hooked up to like a hardwired internet source. So with that as well, they got the new video board and the new sound system. Really excited to see what that if that delivers in person like they keep hyping it up.
Yeah, I did see that. I am excited about
that. And then just being back in the Jack. It's I'm certainly jealous that I can't be there, but I know you'll be able to tell me all about it, so I feel like I won't be missing much. Yeah, other than
that, nothing beats a Saturday at the Jack. Just that kind of starts to kick off about 10 or 15, 20 minutes before kickoff is when they kind of kick off their program festivities, and Iowa State kind of has that down to a T when it comes to the production deal. So it'd be kind of fun to see if they're able to make any improvements. But yeah, it's electric. It's going to be electric, and I'm really looking forward to it.
With that being said, I guess we'll go and we'll hit our final topic here tonight. Like I said last week, it's something I kind of want to do to give everybody an insight on ourselves and what we do outside, for leisure time. Just kind of what your weekend plans are. Obviously, you're going to be at the Jack tomorrow. Like I said, that's an all-day event. But it is also a 3-day weekend this week with Labor Day on Monday. So I was just curious what else you got going on outside of getting up to Ames there.
Yeah, well, like you said, those I always need a nice recovery day after a Saturday at the Jack. So I don't have any big Labor Day plans. Obviously, the highlight of my weekend is going to be that Iowa State game. But yeah, just kind of looking forward. I assume there must be some college games on Sunday be kind of nice to. I'm guessing there's college games on Sunday. I'm trying.
Yeah, there's a couple games on.
So
With
that'll be kind of nice.
you got Virginia Tech and South Carolina at 2:00, and then Notre Dame Miami Sunday night at 6:30. So
yeah, so that'll be fun. Usually, kind of my post Jack Trice recovery involves watching those NFL games. We're still a week off from that, so that's kind of my plans is watch some college football on Sunday, and I think there is a Monday night college game on Monday night, TCU in North Carolina. Really excited about that one. That's of course Bill Belichick's debut in Chapel Hill. So
yeah, it should be interesting.
Iowa State's a highlight of my weekend. Not a whole lot after that. Mr. Slim, what you got going on this weekend?
Well, no doubt I'm going to be watching the game tomorrow. I'm kind of planning on having some people over to my place. We are not supposed to have grills, but I'm going to go out and get a little 1 pound propane grill out some food. Just kind of enjoy the lighter kickoff to the season. Last week was about as intense as it gets for the first football game of the entire year for the Clones. So kind of looking forward to like a nice hangout session with some people and, eating good food, having a good time. Sunday, I will actually be in Kansas City. I'm going to the Tigers-Royals game. That opportunity came up to me last second and was caught at a weak moment, went bought tickets right away. So planning on doing that. That's a 1:10 first pitch time. So going to be up pretty early to get down there in time for that. As soon as that game's over, turning and burning and trying to get back for a fantasy draft Sunday night. And one of the couple.
How'd your draft go last week?
That's right. It went.
We need an update on that.
It went fairly well. Let me go through the roster real quick, since you brought it up. So with the first pick, I had the 8th pick. I took Nico Collins from the Houston Texans.
You got your guy.
That's my boy. Had him the last 2.5 years. Traded for him a couple years ago. I'm all in on Nico being wide receiver 1 in the league this year. I think he's got a really good opportunity. And I did complete the 1-2 turn that I was talking about. I got Jackson coming back. So Collins, Jackson. 3rd round, I went with Alvin Kamara. Just seemed like the guy that was in the right spot, and obviously you need a decent running back if you're going to do anything in the league. Then I turned around and got Devontae Adams to follow that up in the 4th round. In the 5th round, I took Jameson Williams from the Lions. I got a lot of faith in him, kind of having a breakout year. He just needs to play a full season. I think if he plays a full season, I think he's potentially a top 10 guy. Obviously, my 6th round was eaten up by Brock Bowers, but that's okay because he should be elite this year. And then filling out the starting lineup, Travis Etienne. Kind of a lot of question marks there in Jacksonville. You don't know what you're going to get or what you're going to see. But needed a second running back, and he was one of the top guys in that slot where I took him. I can't remember what round it was, but kind of hoping that he's more on the boom side rather than the bust, but you never know. And then to fill out the bench, Kyler Murray is a second quarterback. Tyrone Tracy, obviously, is a keeper from last year. He was my 13th round pick since he was a free agent when I picked him up. Joe Mixon on the pup. That's kind of a future play. I did pick up Amari Cooper this week. I dropped Johnny Smith to pick him up. And then Deebo Samuel sitting down there at the bottom of the bench. So
very good. So you're pretty happy with how it turned out? Feeling
good. Those first 2 picks were the 2 most I was concerned about, and I got the 2 guys I wanted. So just kind of filling out the roster after that. But to get back to the weekend plans, I got that draft Sunday night, and then I'm I don't really know what's going on Monday yet. I know a couple people I've talked to have talked about going down to the zoo here in Omaha, kind of checking it out, checking out some animals and whatnot, but nothing really solidified on that end. So Monday could just end up being a lazy day and getting ready to hit it hard for the next week. So that's about all I got.
Yeah, that's about all I got for you. I know at some point we didn't get a chance to touch on the Cyclones in the NFL. I think we're good to postpone that to next week. We can kind of pair that up with the NFL kickoff, kind of go over where some of our favorite Cyclones are landed in the NFL, because there's a lot more than it used to be. So, but yeah, that's all I got. Excited to. Looks like there's some good games going on right now. Colorado's having some issues with Georgia Tech. They're tied up with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I guess just to jump back to what we started off originally, unfortunately, our Jayhawks did lose to Dallas Center Grimes in Urbandale's first football game in a very long time without Sam Anderson as the head coach. And then I see
that's right.
Bouncing back to college, we've got Auburn and Baylor looking like they're
yep, that's what I got on right now. Baylor's holding strong.
Yeah, they are. So, and a little surprised that Colorado's having some struggles here. I don't know if Georgia Tech was supposed to be better, but certainly didn't expect them to didn't expect that score. So excited to turn over to these games. I'll kind of take today as my take the rest of today as my college football watching experience, and since I'll be up in God's country tomorrow.
Absolutely. All right, my guy. Well, do you want to land the plane?
Land the plane. I'll let you land the plane because you got to read the sponsor.
All right. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Self-Made Sports Network podcast, now brought to you by Hybrid Promotions. I want to thank everybody from Self-Made and from Hybrid for continuing to support us and push us out into the world. Yeah, other than that, I hope everybody enjoys their weekend, and I hope your football team gets a win this weekend.
Go Cyclones.
Go Cyclones, baby. All right, everybody. We'll catch you next week at the usual time, 8 o'clock. Thanks for tuning in, and we will be chatting with you soon.
Peace.